When people think of the Star Wars fleet, they picture a few Star Destroyers hanging above planets, giant space battles, and maybe the Death Star floating like a mechanical moon. But what if everything you imagine is still far too small? Because the real scale of Star Wars isn't dozens of ships, it isn't hundreds, it isn't even thousands. The Galactic Empire alone possessed around 25,000 Imperial Star Destroyers, and that's before counting millions of support vessels, fighters, carriers, patrol ships, transports, and local defense fleets. To understand how huge that truly is, imagine every navy on Earth combined, then multiply it until our modern military starts looking like a few fishing boats. Today we're diving into the true size of the Star Wars fleet, and why even a force of unimaginable size was still barely enough to control an entire galaxy. The Star Wars galaxy is so massive that our brains struggle to process it. Earth contains roughly 8 billion people, and even that number is difficult to visualize. The Star Wars galaxy, meanwhile, contains millions of inhabited worlds, countless colonies, trillions to quadrillions of beings, vast sectors spread across tens of thousands of light years. This means any fleet designed to control such a civilization would need to operate on a scale that completely breaks our understanding of military logistics. And surprisingly, when we actually start looking at the numbers, the Empire's fleet may have been both enormous and strangely small at the same time. The number most fans know comes from estimates in expanded material, suggesting the Galactic Empire maintained approximately 25,000 Imperial-class Star Destroyers. At first glance, that number sounds absurd. 25,000 ships that are each over a mile long. But let's understand what one of those ships actually was. A single Imperial Star Destroyer wasn't simply a ship. It was practically a mobile military city. Its typical length is about 1.6 kilometers, or 1 mile. The average crew is about 37,000 personnel. There are roughly 9,700 stormtroopers in each vessel, with thousands more pilots and support staff. A typical Star Destroyer also carries vehicles such as AT-AT walkers, AT-ST walkers, troop transports, and around 72 TIE fighters. One Star Destroyer could independently invade planets, enforce military rule, transport armies, and establish orbital dominance. Now multiply that by 25,000. Let's only calculate personnel. A Star Destroyer carried approximately 37,000 crew, 9,700 stormtroopers, total about 46,700 people per ship. Now multiply that with 25,000 Imperial Star Destroyers. That equals more than 1.16 billion personnel, and that doesn't even include TIE pilots, support fleets, intelligence officers, supply crews, planetary defense forces, shipyards, ground armies, Navy administration. The Imperial military probably involved multiple billions of individuals. That alone exceeds the population of many nations on Earth. But here's where things become strange. 25,000 ships sounds impossible until you compare them against a galaxy. Let's simplify. Suppose the Empire controlled 1 million inhabited worlds. Now divide 25,000 Star Destroyers divided by 1 million worlds. That gives us 1 Star Destroyer for every 40 planets. And many estimates suggest the galaxy contained far more than 1 million inhabited systems. Suddenly, the Empire no longer looks overwhelmingly powerful. Instead, it begins to look stretched incredibly thin. You start understanding why the Empire depended on fear. Wilhuff Tarkin understood something important. The Empire couldn't physically occupy every world. There were simply too many planets. So instead of controlling everything directly, the Empire developed what became known as the Tarkin Doctrine: rule through fear rather than force. The idea was simple: make examples so terrifying that resistance becomes unthinkable, which explains superweapons like the Death Star. Destroy one planet publicly, and millions of others might surrender without a fight, because mathematically, The Empire didn't have enough ships to be everywhere. Fear became a force multiplier. When fans hear Imperial fleet, they usually imagine only Star Destroyers. But those ships were merely the visible core. Behind them existed countless support vessels. Examples included escort frigates, light cruisers, carriers, corvettes, supply ships, tankers, medical ships, recon vessels, patrol craft. Real navies don't operate with only battleships. A battleship without logistics becomes useless. A Star Destroyer might dominate combat, but it's still needed. Fuel, food, repairs, spare parts, ammunition, personnel replacements. For every famous capital ship, several unseen ships likely existed supporting it. This could push total Imperial vessel numbers into the millions. One of the most overlooked parts of the Imperial war machine was the industrial infrastructure required to keep the fleet alive. People often imagine the Empire as ships drifting through space endlessly, as if they were self-sustaining giants. But in reality, a galactic fleet of this size would consume resources at a horrifying rate. Every Star Destroyer needed enormous quantities of fuel. Every crew member needed food, water, oxygen, medical care, and equipment. Every fighter required maintenance. Every weapon system needed replacement parts. Even the armor plating on these ships would constantly degrade under combat stress, radiation exposure, and the sheer brutality of hyperspace travel. Now imagine servicing not one ship, but tens of thousands. The Empire didn't just build warships, it built an economy designed entirely around war. Entire planets became dedicated production worlds. Kuat Drive Yards, one of the most famous shipbuilding corporations in Star Wars, effectively operated as a planet-sized military factory. The ring structures orbiting Kuat could produce massive capital ships on an unimaginable scale. Meanwhile, worlds like Corellia specialized in engineering and transport vessels, while places like Fondor became industrial engines feeding the Imperial Navy. Some planets likely spent their entire existence manufacturing only a few categories of components. One world may produce reactor systems, another may construct turbo lasers, another may refine fuel, another may train officers. The Empire wasn't just a military, it was a civilization-wide supply chain, and that scale creates another terrifying realization. The construction of a single Imperial Star Destroyer would likely require billions of individual parts. Think about modern aircraft carriers. A single carrier already demands years of construction, thousands of workers, advanced electronics, nuclear systems, and global supply networks. Now scale that upward to a 1.6-kilometer warship capable of orbital bombardment, interstellar travel, and planetary invasion. Then build 25,000 of them. Suddenly, the Empire begins to feel less like a government and more like an industrial force of nature. And despite all that power, the galaxy still remained difficult to control because distance itself became the enemy. Even with hyperspace, travel across the galaxy still took time. A rebellion could strike a remote outpost and disappear before reinforcements arrived. Pirates could attack shipping lanes hidden between systems. Entire sectors could quietly become unstable long before the Imperial Center noticed. This is why regional governors and MOFs became so important. The Empire couldn't micromanage millions of worlds directly from Coruscant, so it divided the galaxy into enormous administrative regions controlled by powerful military leaders. Each sector effectively operated like its own semi-independent authority, and that created another weakness. The larger the Empire grew, the harder it became to maintain unity. Ambitious admirals competed for influence. Officials falsified reports. Resources disappeared through corruption. Some commanders hoarded ships to protect politically important worlds, while outer systems received almost no protection at all. This imbalance made the galaxy feel very different depending on where you lived. In the wealthy core worlds, Imperial presence may have seemed overwhelming. Star Destroyers patrolled major trade routes. Massive fleets guarded key systems. Military installations dominated nearby space, but farther out in the outer rim, entire regions may rarely have seen major Imperial ships at all. This uneven distribution of power is part of what made the Empire feel both unstoppable and strangely fragile at the same time. Because fear can control territory temporarily, but fear also spreads panic, and panic creates resistance. The more the Empire tightened its grip, the more worlds quietly began looking for ways to fight back. Not through direct warfare, that would have been suicide, but through espionage, sabotage, smuggling, information leaks, small acts of rebellion scattered across thousands of systems. And in a galaxy this large, even tiny sparks could eventually become a fire the Empire could no longer contain. Now consider starfighters. Each Imperial Star Destroyer carried around 72 TIE fighters. 25,000 Star Destroyers alone would carry 1.8 million TIE fighters, and that still ignores independent fighter wings, planetary defense squadrons, training units, reserve forces, carriers, specialized craft. The Empire may have fielded several million starfighters. Imagine standing on Earth and watching millions of combat aircraft filling the sky. Now move that battle into space. Before the Empire, the Galactic Republic fought the Clone Wars. Its primary warship was the Venator-class Star Destroyer. The Republic rapidly built enormous fleets to fight the Separatists. The war involved thousands of capital ships, massive clone armies, countless support vessels, droid fleets numbering in extraordinary quantities. The Clone Wars lasted only a few years, but the military production during that period was staggering. The Empire later inherited and expanded much of that infrastructure. People often imagine fleets packed closely together because films show dramatic battles. Reality would be very different. Space is unbelievably large. Even ships in the same formation could be separated by kilometers. Entire battle groups might be spread across distances larger than cities. A fleet of thousands of ships wouldn't resemble boats on an ocean, it would resemble moving stars. This is one reason Star Wars movies can accidentally make fleets feel smaller than they really are. The camera only shows tiny portions of the battlefield. This creates one of Star Wars' biggest surprises. How could a tiny rebellion defeat an empire with billions of personnel and countless ships? Because the Empire had a scale problem. Large systems become difficult to manage. Problems included communication delays, corruption, political rivalries, supply issues, slow bureaucracy, massive territory. The rebels exploited this weakness. Instead of fighting everywhere, they struck supply lines, shipyards, critical infrastructure, isolated targets. A giant military machine can be powerful, but giant machines are also harder to turn. The true size of the Star Wars fleet isn't simply 25,000 Star Destroyers. That's only the tip of an iceberg hidden beneath galactic space. The real numbers likely involved millions of ships, millions of starfighters, billions of personnel, endless logistics networks, entire worlds dedicated to military production. And the most fascinating part? Even that may not have been enough, because once your civilization spans an entire galaxy, numbers stop behaving the way our minds expect. Suddenly, a fleet larger than anything humanity could ever build starts feeling small. And that may be the most terrifying thing about Star Wars. If you enjoyed this deep dive, subscribe and comment. How many ships do you think the Empire actually had? Because the deeper you go into Star Wars lore, the bigger the galaxy becomes.